video is sponsored by Squarespace. The Barcelona shakedown is done. We've seen all 11 2026 Formula 1 cars on track, apart from the Williams. So what better time to take a very speculative go at my 2026 Formula 1 season predictions. My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. Right, we've got a few categories to kick things off with, starting with most improved. Which driver last year didn't quite deliver but will step up significantly going into 26? I did put a call out on my YouTube community page for your thoughts and feelings as well. Make sure you subscribe to the Tommo YouTube channel so you can get involved. Rui Search for most improved says Haas, definitely. Would love to see it. That stepped up investment from Toyota turning it into the TGR Haas Formula 1 team might pay dividends. Senior Dip at 8954 says most improved Bortoleto. For his first year, he outdid what most people expected him to do, and many still underrate him against Hulk, but gave him this year to cook. And look, I think Gabby's got a lot to show. His quali pace at times last year against what is a quali merchant a bit in Hulkenberg was very, very impressive. And certainly his points tally did not reflect the quality of Gabby's first season in F1. However, for me, I've chosen to hedge my bets on most improved this year with Lewis Hamilton in his Ferrari. Now, don't get it twisted, right? I'm not suggesting for a moment that he's going to finish ahead points-wise or be outperforming Charles Leclerc. I don't think that's going to be the case. But things were so abject last season, and I think the 41-year-old in many people's minds is kind of past it, is over that crest and only going to get worse. However, I do not agree. Look, to reiterate my points from last year, he averaged in at least my qualifying head-to-heads within 0.2 of Charles Leclerc in what was a very tricky car for both of them at times. And that deficit he had to Charles wouldn't have been so punished if it wasn't the most competitive close run qualifying in F1 history. Lewis has already spoken on this generation of car being a more positive experience to drive as well. It's a little bit more fun to drive, it's a little bit easier to catch, and I would definitely say more enjoyable. If he wants to, I think Lewis has the longevity and the skill set to go as long as, you know, we're seeing from Fernando Alonso right now. Do I think Lewis is as obsessed with racing as Fernando is? Maybe not quite. So I also don't think Lewis has that ego and that level of absolute self-determination to go into his mid-40s. But if this car does inherently align with his more inbuilt learned skill set over all of these years in Formula 1, I think we could see Lewis maybe not at his best, but right at the sharp end. For sure. Next up, closest teammates. In terms of points, perhaps, but then, you know, that kind of weighs more towards the lower teams than the higher teams. I'm more talking performance-wise closest teammates. Daniel Harrington 5629 says closest teammates Lando and Oscar. We saw it last year, but it's very possible that without favouritism and with Oscar wanting to fight back, they are more equal. Still, plenty of you out there think there was clear and obvious favouritism at McLaren. I don't buy it, not for me, but I do think it will be very close once again. I do absolutely agree. There will be not much in it. I think Lando getting that title one will release a better, more calm, more composed version of him. And Oscar going into his fourth season will have learnt a lot from what worked and what didn't work last season and be better than ever. Benedict Trin 6501 says hot take for closest teammates. Kimi adapts well to the new regs and has the luxury of Mercedes' superior pace putting less pressure on him compared to last year. Him and Russell were close in quali, with Russell comfortably beating Kimi in the races. The quali delta between Kimi and George was, you know, fairly significant last year, comfortably over 0.2. But I do agree that we will see a more complete version of Kimi, not the final package of course, but we saw in moments, didn't we, last season in Miami, in Brazil, the peaks are absolutely good enough. But George has had so long in the sport now to really work on his craft, and it feels like potentially this is the time for him to fight for a title. We'll get into that. But closest teammates for me, I've actually gone with the Audi boys, Gabriel Bortoleto and Nico Hulkenberg. Nico struggled earlier on in the season, at least in terms of one lap pace relative to Gabby, then pulled it back by the end of the year. Obviously delivered that fantastic podium in Silverstone, but broadly speaking, there wasn't that much in it. I think Gabby was guilty of over pushing and was caught in far too many shunts compared to his way more experienced teammate. But again, this is his second season in Formula 1, and I think Bortoleto has already shown that he deserves to be here. And look, Hulkenberg's different gravy. Do the older boys struggle more with adapting to these new engines with a higher electrical component, more stuff to manage during the stint? Perhaps, but then does their increased racing IQ allow them the capacity to deal with it? I think over the course of the season, it'll about even out. Next up, we have worst surprise. And, well, Spark19 says, Alpine, who will continue to be trash. I have no hope for the team. The drivers are not the issue. Nice of you to clarify that part. And, look, obviously, Enstone, it's been a while since they've delivered anything somewhat respectable. Didn't they finish like 4th in the constructors in like 2021? Quality 4279 says Aston Martin, the new effective is overhyped. His initial feedback on Aston Martin's infrastructure was scathing, plus the PU matters more with these regs, and Honda is an unknown. Not sure TP is the right role for Newey and might make it difficult to build on Newey inspired aero foundations of the Aston Martin car. Certainly Aston have been the most intriguing team, I think the most difficult team to predict, honestly, this season, because they've gone so aggressive with the car design. It's such an unknown with Honda, but also Honda did deliver arguably the best power unit of the most recent generation of cars, certainly the power unit that powered Max to all of his success. And actually, I agree, I've also gone Aston Martin as my worst surprise, and I've just not been convinced. You mentioned Adrian Newey's scathing feedback early on. He also said recently they're 4 months behind schedule. The AMR Technology Campus is still evolving. The CoreWeave wind tunnel wasn't on song until April and only joined the team last March, so we've started from behind. In truth, the reality is we didn't get a model of the 26 car into the wind tunnel until mid-April, whereas most, if not all of our rivals would have had a model in the wind tunnel from the moment the 2026 aero testing ban ended at the beginning of January last year. This put us on the back foot by about 4 months, which has meant a very, very compressed research and design cycle. The car only came together at the last minute, which is why we were fighting to make it to the Barcelona shakedown. Look, you can definitely make an argument for the second half of 26 being decent for Aston Martin, but out of the gates, I think they're going to lose a lot of points relative to the other teams. And again, you have to mention the engine, right? Only 65 laps on the board in the Barcelona shakedown for Aston Martin. Honda, that is the only team running that engine as well. The next lowest number of laps from a power unit was Audi with 243, who again are still only running with one team. Red Bull powertrains over 600 laps. Mercedes over 1,000. Like, relatively speaking, it's only the top 10 who score points. I don't see many opportunities for Aston Martin. And one final category I'm going to chuck in at the end, best surprise, and I'm just going with mine. I'm saying Alpine, because with a Mercedes PU in the back, Pierre Gasly at his prime, David Sanchez having had a full settling in period to be able to design this car from the ground up. The same man who led the design of that 2022 Ferrari that came out the gates swinging. Quote me on this, Pierre Gasly will win a race in 2026. Because I struggle to believe their chassis is going to be a mile off. There's been periods of time in the recent past where they've always had this power disadvantage, yet they've made themselves look respectable. They've had a much more predictable start to the season than Williams, certainly. McLaren, of course, yeah, Mercedes, they're going to be a bit behind in terms of infrastructure, but reliability is going to be a big factor this year, and I think there will be an opportunity that will present itself, and we know Pierre Gasly, when he gets a chance, can take it, as we saw in Monza. Oh, and one other good surprise, today's video sponsor, Squarespace. Because you will be surprised about how much you are able to do with zero coding knowledge thanks to Squarespace's incredible platform with built-in design intelligence, blueprint AI tools to make it a doddle to build your very own stunning online home. Whether you want to set up a blog, an online store, a portfolio, the world is your oyster. Take payments, create members zones, do all you need to do, powered by Squarespace. It's completely free to try. It only asks for any money when you want to publish your finished website live to the world. And when that time inevitably comes around, head to squarespace.com/TOMMO'F1 to get 10% off your very first website or domain. Okay, here we go. All of the drivers from P22 to P1, very speculative. That's all part of the fun, right? And unfortunately, in stone dead last, I've gone for Valtteri Bottas in his Cadillac alongside Sergio Perez in P21, because I do think they have taken on a huge task to build this team from the ground up and be any way competitive, right? They'll have a decent engine, sure, but in every other facet, operationally, strategy-wise, car assembly, etc., they might have individuals with experience in Formula 1, but making that work as a cohesive team is going to take time. I mean, F1 is complicated enough as it is. Now with this massively increased MGU-H component, with the battery being half of the power and so much to manage, that's going to be tough, like for everyone, but especially Cadillac, who are trying to get on top of all of these other things that the teams don't have to worry about. Mercedes have their established facility, so do McLaren, so do Red Bull, etc. Cadillac are working on all that in the background, and that is going to distract. We still only have the top 10 drivers scoring points now out of 22. When are they going to have opportunities? It's going to be reliant on massive misfortune for others, for sure, for them to even luck into a point. Sorry, I'd love to see it another way, but that's just what I feel. And putting Perez ahead of Checo, putting Sergio ahead of Valtteri, I rate Sergio over a race distance more than I do Valtteri. That's basically it. Look who it is. Minton is here. What's that? People need to like the video, comment, and then watch the entire thing, because watch time is the most important metric on YouTube. Really? Who knew? Step aside Colin and Samir, Mr. Beast. Mr. Minton, look at him. Look at his little paws. 7 years old now, the grey beard's coming in. Look at it. Look at his little grey beard. He's literally falling asleep. I would pick Bottas in qualifying, like over a lap, but Valtteri's wheel-to-wheel combat is not one of his strong suits. And when you're fighting at the back, you're kind of having to do that a fair bit. I'm not expecting much. Cadillac, of course, then that means they are P11 in the Constructors' Championship. P20, I've gone Lance Stroll. Sorry, Lance. Like, again, I'm not expecting much from the power unit early doors. I think the chassis is it's aggressive for sure, but I think reliability is going to hurt Aston Martin quite a lot, especially at the start of the season. Fernando's going to consistently outperform him as per, and the 27-year-old going into his 10th year in F1, I'm not seeing really any progress. P19, Gabriel Bortoleto, and P18, Nico Hülkenberg. The Audi boys are together. And like I said earlier, it's going to be super close between those two. I don't really see much in it. I guess you could argue, because I think Audi's going to be at the back, I think they're going to be P10 in the Constructors, that, you know, one freak result could see them, you know, massively different in points again, like last season. When I'm saying closest teammates, I mean on performance, right? That's the measurement I'm going to try and go by for this. I think that's the important measurement. Reliability is going to be a big issue, particularly with the brand new engine suppliers. And of course, Audi, 243 laps on the board in testing isn't ideal. They're going to be pushing boundaries, and that's going to result in, I think, mistakes. This team is also fundamentally still Sauber. It's going to take a while for Bonotto and Wheatley and all this personnel they've brought in, very good personnel, to really stamp their authority and make this team a proper Audi Works team. That's going to take time. I mean, talking to Bonotto, he made it very clear that there is a lot to do after the Barcelona shakedown. It's a lot of work for the entire team. It's a lot of work for the drivers, for the engineers back at home, fixing all the problems, design, operational, whatever we have seen. All the details need to be managed and need to be fixed. So we've got a very long list, a very, very long list. I've never seen such a long list. It's a marathon for the boys and girls from Bavaria. I think they're up for it, but I don't think they'll do much in 26. P17, I've gone with Arvid Lindblad in the Racing Bulls, the only rookie in 2026 who has impressed massively within Red Bull, has had his fair share of shunts in Formula 2. Don't get me wrong, but there is clearly a lot of talent there. It is a fresh start for everyone, which should help him relative to Liam, his teammate. However, he still has to get on top of and get used to this whole F1 world, right? And Arvid is still so young. He's still like 18. He's 15 years younger than me. That's disgusting. That's not acceptable. But look, the media, the spotlight is gonna be tough. However, he carries himself incredibly well. I've never met Arvid, but I hope to soon. And he seems like a very, very sound lad. I'm sure he's got a good team around him. And then there's the power unit. Look, we just don't know what that Red Bull 4 powertrain is going to be like. That's a big unknown, because just like Audi and Honda, it is a new power unit division. However, it is within the existing Red Bull campus, and it is, you know, a team that's using a lot of the ex-Honda engine staff. P16, I don't like putting him here, but I've gone Fernando Alonso. And it's, again, nothing on Fernando. I don't see the light in this year anyway, right? This season, I don't think the Aston's going to be ready to be competitive at the front. I just don't. And what's sad about this is that if it is this bad in 2026, unless they have a really good end of the season where it's shown real progress, maybe this will be it for Fernando in F1, which really sucks. Honestly, like when he came back into F1, when he rejoined with Alpine after his year out, I wasn't a great lover of Fernando, but in this new generation, maybe it's me getting a bit older and a bit more mature, I've just vibed with him a hell of a lot more, and this sport is so much better for a character like him being in it. But like I said, this Honda, this existing Honda, isn't the same Honda that was developing those engines, that was winning constantly in the prime, you know, Red Bull era. When they pulled out, they lost a lot of staff and personnel to Red Bull powertrains. And in this relative game that is Formula One, am I going to put Honda ahead of Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull powertrains? No. And the unreliability, even if the performance is there occasionally, the unreliability that I think will come with that is going to hurt them both, Fernando and Lance. So that puts Aston Martin P9 in my Constructors' Championship prediction. Of course, Fernando ahead of Lance in teammate head-to-head as well. P15, I've gone Liam Lawson. With a full pre-season under his lid, stability within his F1 career for the first time ever, I do think we will see the best version of Liam Lawson to date in 2026. A version who merits a lot more love than I think he gets. Because he doesn't get that much, does he, Liam? He pissed off too many Fernando and Checo fans, didn't he? You kind of made a rod for your own back, mate, there. And as much as I am disappointed as a Yuki fan that we're not seeing him in F1 this year, he did have 5 full seasons. He got a fair crack of the whip, and I think Liam hasn't been given a fair crack of the whip. So I just hope that he can take this opportunity and run with it. Because do I think he's got a future long-term at Red Bull Racing? Probably not. But can he showcase, look at me, I'm mustard, I'm quality, and maybe get a seat elsewhere? I think that's his best chance long term, which then puts Racing Bulls at P8 in my Constructors' Championship. Again, the unknowns around the engine, and of course Arvid's a rookie, unknowns there, and Liam, there's still some unknowns around him for sure. I'd agree with that, but that team's still got a way to go, I think, before it achieves maturity, I guess. P14, I've gone Esteban Ocon, P13 Ollie Bearman, which means both the Haas boys are here. I think Esteban's going to be much improved from last season. I'm so glad for him. He had a decent run in Abu Dhabi in that final race, because he felt lost at times last season, and that must have really hurt, seeing a rookie come in and outperform him so often. However, I believe in Esteban. I think he's a quality driver, and Ollie will just continue to push on. He will still make mistakes. He made a... That's my phone. He'll make mistakes, he'll push too far, he'll do silly stuff, because it's his second season in Formula One, second full season anyway. You can't really count 2024, can you? Ferrari engine looks good. They got loads of laps on the board, the third most of any team. Okamatsu knows what he's doing. He knows how to create a proper team environment, us against the world. But again, that stepped up Toyota support can only serve them in a positive way. Chuffed that they've given Jack Doohan the reserve driver seat as well. Whether he'd actually serve it over Ryo Hirakawa, difficult to know, but I hope Jack's time in F1 is not done, because I don't think we got to see the final version. But yes, that puts Haas at P7 in my Constructors' Championship. Again, I've put Bearman ahead of Ocon head-to-head. There's not going to be much in it, but I'll give it to Ollie. P12, I've gone Franco Colapinto, which I think will be much higher than many of you out there would have predicted him. I do understand the arguments against him for sure. He has had too many shunts relative to his entire Formula One career. And yes, he did have some shunts last year, by the way, in Silverstone qualifying, in Imola qualifying. On top of all the Williams incidents, he needs to get on top of that. But I do believe there is a quality driver there. He made an impression for a reason. And he's not only in that Alpine seat because of his backing. Definitely not. And with a full pre-season, because again, he was thrown in at the deep end at Alpine last year, qualified on average 2.5 tenths behind Pierre Gasly, who is a demon over a lap. I think that's pretty good. He's been able to out-qualify Gasly and Albon on occasions, 26 starts to his name, a full pre-season, settling in, new regulations as well. I feel pretty positive about Franco. Don't get me wrong, Gasly's still going to be the main point scorer at that team, but don't sleep on him. That's all I'm saying. P11, I've gone Alex Albon, and P10 Carlos Sainz. A lot of teammates, I'm putting them close together because if it is an engine formula where there's big gaps between car performance, then you're more likely to see that happen. But yeah, look, we've seen zero running of the car in Barcelona. They've done a little shakedown at Silverstone, and yeah, first glimpse of the actual car is going to be the Bahrain test first day on Wednesday. Maybe going missing for the shakedown was a necessary evil for the greater good, and they have produced a title challenger for 2026. However, the fact that there were delays tells me all I need to know, that the team structurally isn't ready yet. And James Vowles has essentially admitted this, right? They've gone a bit too ambitious. The operational systems are not there to keep up with the demand of making a title fighting competitive 2026 Formula 1 car, which is disappointing as an Albon fan. And you see the potential Carlos has. We know he can, if he's given the machinery, he can win a championship, no doubt in my mind. And I do think he is the more complete of the two drivers. I think it was very close last season, Albon, Sainz. But I would say now he's had the year to settle in, I would head-to-head Sainz over Albon for sure. And that also means I'm putting Williams P6 in the constructors, which is a step backwards, but maybe this is the way it's got to be. I mean, I remember an interview from Alex in 2024 talking about these 26 regulations. Winning in 26 would be difficult, but winning in 27 will be much more realistic. And 2 years on, they've demonstrated that yeah, that is maybe the case, that the systems aren't quite up to par. Now's the year they need to get on top of that stuff to then try and mount a fight in 27. P9, I've gone Isaac Hadjar. Now, again, as a Yuki fan, disappointed to see him lose his seat entirely from the sport, but you can't say Hadjar didn't deserve the opportunity. And with a brand new car, I think this is going to be the closest teammate we've had to Max since Daniel Ricciardo. I think Hadjar is going to find a way to get close, like relative to other teammate pairings, still probably not that close, but much closer than it has been for years now. He's a big character who just strikes me as very, very disciplined, incredibly motivated, very emotional behind the wheel. However, he finds a way to channel it in an incredibly positive way. He's a fighter who bounced back massively from his Australia incident at the start of last season. Outperformed most of our expectations last year, is in a non-Adrian Newey designed car. Pierre Wache and his team is leading it on this front. The engine is one thing entirely. The chassis team, look, they've been years learning from Adrian Newey designs on his pen and paper. These are the people who've been taking those designs and turning them into championship winning cars. So I do think the Red Bull chassis will be good. The power unit, I've got way more questions. P8, Pierre Gasly, and Alpine comfortably in the top 10. What is it doing up here? Look, Pierre's quality, all right? I've always had a lot of time for Pierre. Remember in my earlier videos, I mentioned him as being one of my favourite drivers on the grids. We saw in those, early AlphaTauri years in qualifying, he was an absolute monster. And I just believe that Alpine, as much as it is very embarrassing for Renault to pull the plug on Viry-Châtillon and get rid of their engine program, it is pragmatic from an F1 team point of view. There is no doubt about that. Not a single one of the guests got the question right. How many Q3s did Pierre Gasly make in 2025? It was 11. The Ultimate Car performance did lack last year, but Pierre's performances did not. And I think with a better car this year, he's going to be even more motivated. So yeah, Alpine, P5, constructors from P10 last year, I think Enstone are going to finally start cooking again. P7, I've gone Max Verstappen. Contentious call this. I know some of you are not going to be happy. Let me explain. This is not a reflection on Max. He is the best driver in Formula 1. He's the best racing driver in the world. Of course he is. Adrian Newey might be gone, and I've got no reason again to doubt Pierre Wache and his design team to create a good chassis, a competitive chassis. I think Laurent Mekies is great. I think he's really steadied the ship after Christian's, pretty sudden departure, right? I think he's instilled a lot of confidence in the personnel at the team. He's very approachable, but also he commands that respect. I definitely would not want to get on the wrong side of him, but it's the engine. Like, they have to develop their entire facility from the ground up, which will serve them well longer term. For sure. They won't have the same compromises built into their power unit division that other teams, the more historic teams, Mercedes, Ferrari, have. They will have to iterate and upgrade their own engine department more in time. Red Bull powertrains, Ford will not. But as for the right now, it's still so early on. I just don't see that power unit being competitive relative to the Mercedes and Ferrari in 2026, right? Years on, sure, but not in 26. You're asking too much, even from Max Verstappen, in my opinion, to cover that deficit. And it'll be up to Max to be like, look, is this engine project going in the right direction? Have we done well for our first season? And maybe in 27, you can give me something competitive? Because I do absolutely believe Max wants to stay at the team. He wants to make it work within Red Bull Racing. And they did get some impressive laps on the board in the shakedown, 624 laps in total over the two cars, but that's still significantly less than Mercedes got, over 1,100 over their car and their customer cars. So again, it's a relative game, Formula One, and I just don't believe the Red Bull powertrain is going to be ready yet. P6, another contentious one here. I've gone Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Piastri ahead of Norris. And look, honestly, calling the top three teams, it could go either way, but I was pretty sure I was going to put McLaren third. Because to justify that, you also have to look at Mercedes and Ferrari, right? Firstly, Mercedes, I think they will have learnt their mistakes. They will benefit from being the works engine supplier as much as McLaren have shown you can be a title-winning customer team. I think Mercedes is going to make sure that doesn't happen again. But McLaren, had that fuel system issue in the shakedown. They racked up, just over half the laps of Mercedes, fewer than Haas, Alpine, both Red Bull teams. McLaren's ability to develop a car within a regulation cycle is clear, right? You look at that car, how it turned 180 in 2023 and turned up in Austria and then Silverstone, and was all of a sudden like a front runner. That's great. But then in 2025, as much as Andrea Stella, played down how much upgrade-wise McLaren bought towards the ends of last season, Ferrari and Mercedes had much less to fight for in 2025. They would have shifted resource earlier than McLaren, focus earlier than McLaren, onto the 26 project. And as for putting Lando, world champion, behind Oscar, and I stand by that, I think we'll see a better version of Lando this year. Because, again, he's got that chip off his shoulder. He's got that title won. He can relax, I think, a bit more now. But I also think Oscar Piastri is going to improve. I think Oscar's got the minerals. He's got the ceiling that's higher than Norris's. That's how I feel. Piastri's wheel-to-wheel combat advantage over Norris is going to pay more dividends when you're fighting for podiums, which I think McLaren will be, more so than race wins. Whereas plenty of the time last year, because Lando has exceptional pace, he could put it on pole and drive off into the distance. But look, honestly, I don't know. It's going to be super close between them two, no doubt in my mind, but I've got to give it to someone. So head to head, I've gone Piastri over Norris. And in the Constructors' Championship, of course, McLaren, they are P3. P4, Lewis Hamilton. A much improved Lewis Hamilton, as I've said already, will still finish behind teammate Charles Leclerc, but it will be much closer this time out. And I'm definitely not fully chugging the Ferrari Kool-Aid right now, but so far so good, because they do seem to be in a pretty strong place with their car, as they should be a team with their resource. I mean, Motorsport magazine have reported that the Ferrari car is almost on the weight limit, 770 kilos, just 2 kilos over the minimum 768, which is incredibly impressive if true, before these regulations have even started. I absolutely think they'll be quicker than McLaren at the start of the season. Maybe not by the end of it, we'll see. But also, Lewis is a top driver still. Charles is obviously a top driver. I think they've got no more excuses, which we've definitely said this before, haven't we? P3, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, the Mercedes youngster. I'm putting him third this season. Got the better of George a couple of times last year, but more often than not was behind. Only scored 32% of Mercedes points last season, which isn't enough. But again, he's got that year under his helmet. He's learnt more from the team around him. built that relationship with Bono. He's a raw talent with a lot to show, and come Miami, come Brazil, and maybe some other circuits in 2026, he could definitely get the better of George Russell. And look, the car underneath him is going to be quality. Clearly, they are the strongest package right now, and they need to bank this advantage because it might not last. You know, you might see Ferrari, you might see Aston Martin, you might see Cadillac iterate and bring developments and all of a sudden be leading the way. Probably not Cadillac, but you know what I mean. That same Motorsport magazine article put the Mercedes at 772 kilos, so just 2 kilos heavier than the Ferrari and 4 over the minimum. 500 laps on the board in Barcelona. Bulletproof reliability, did the full 200 kilometer shakedown as well before the Barcelona shakedown. I expect the Mercedes PU to be the one that goes pop the least, relatively anyway, because of course you've got Mercedes, McLaren, Williams and Alpine running it. P2, Charles Leclerc. Don't learn, do I? But I just can't not put Charles right at the front because I just think he's so good. I predicted him to win the title last year. He finished 5th. And now I've predicted him P2. So he'll probably finish P6 or worse. No, we're not doing that. It's going to happen. Another year of Fred influence within the team. Lewis fixing some of the issues and bringing more of the insight and allowing that insight to flourish within that Ferrari team that he has from his 20 plus years of experience in Formula One. If this team wasn't called Ferrari and I was just looking at it objectively, I would believe that they're going to have a good season. It's just when it's Ferrari, it's like, well, of course they're going to find a way to Ferrari it, aren't they? Charles is absolutely him. A demon over a lap, phenomenal in wheel-to-wheel combat, great at managing a stint. The biggest question mark I could say around Charles is probably his wet weather work. However, well, he very much thinks it's the car. He lamented the Ferrari after their pretty poor Vegas quali showing where he was P9 and Lewis went out in Q1 in the wet. It's been like that since I joined the team. We've been struggling massively at finding grip in those kind of conditions. It's hugely frustrating because it's probably been my biggest strength in the junior categories. Ferrari, you need to get on top of that because they cannot rely on Mother Nature keeping things dry all season, right? Maybe this is their year, probably not. But if anyone's going to extract the maximum of the car that's put underneath him, I think it is Charles Leclerc. Which means Ferrari are P2 in my Constructors' Championship. Again, Leclerc ahead of Hamilton, head-to-head. Onto the champion. P1, George Russell. He's going to get it done. He's ready to get it done. I think he will get it done. The hype around him and Mercedes was big before the Barcelona shakedown. It is bigger since the Barcelona shakedown. He is absolutely ready. Many of the strengths I see in Charles in terms of one-lap pace, wheel-to-wheel, George has as well. I do think he's a bit more guilty of a shunt, hence the memes. You definitely know what I'm talking about. He can be pretty YOLO on the strategy side as well, which can bite him quite badly. But look, these drivers at the top, you know, Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, Alonso, they are, you know, there are marginal differences here. But as it all plays out, 2026 F1 World Drivers' Championship winner will be George Russell and Constructors' Championship winners will be Mercedes. What do you think? Let me know. I know you will. Flame me in the comments below. As long as you give me that watch time, whatever. Pleasure as always. My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.